Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. We're also sponsored by Architect, the premier site for hosting your decks on the internet. I love them and they love me, and it seems like a good reason for you to use them. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam, Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Architect and Quiver, and by all of you who support me at Patreon, patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I'm very excited to have a gentleman on my show who I've actually been trying to have. Well, I mean, I've been following the career of for like a decade plus, and been like, man, it would be fun to talk to him on my show. And we ran into each other at a bunch of different like Magic cons. I'm like, I should really just send you a message. So I have David McDarby, he who of the famously dressed up like Jace in basically every con I've ever been to, and also, you know, did things, former Wizards designer, worked at Cube, did a lot of Star City videos back in the ancient days. Like, weren't you on Commander Versus way back a million years ago?
Yeah, that was actually that was my show that I pitched and got on the show for Star City. Yeah.
Well, there, Commander Versus, a show that I watched for a very, very long time, and really still do. But yeah, like I was a big fan of. So, just a brief personal note: when I started getting hardcore back into Magic back in 2011 or so, I would watch and listen to a lot of SCG events, because like every weekend there would be coverage of some SCG tour or like a GP or something, and you know, like, my dad would listen to baseball while mowing the lawn. I listened to SCG coverage while mowing the lawn. And so you would come up as a player in those tours all the time. So I learned to be a fan watching you play Magic all the time, and then watching you making Star City stuff like Commander Versus or just showing up on random videos and things. So I was like a huge fan. And when you left to go to WotC, I was simultaneously like thrilled for you and really bummed. You know, like I was like, oh no.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, Shib. It's nice to hear that things that we have done in the past, you can see how it's been reflected positively on other people. You made people a little happier, and you know that's what it's all about. So thanks for saying that, Shib.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were a fun player. Like, how long did you? Gosh, I'm like jumbling I'm like so excited to talk to you. I've forgotten when to start. So, when did you start Magic?
Yeah, my first set was Zendikar, the first one. I was going camping with some friends in college, and I'm not the biggest outdoorsman ever, despite living in Seattle now. So at Walmart, we checked out in the the card line, and I was like, oh, whatever, I'm just going camping because I like my friends. Magic the Gathering, like Zendikar, like this is like some like that game that like by the D&D people, right? By Wizards of the Coast. Well, D&D is really fun because I played a lot of 3rd edition, some 3.5. I guess I'll buy this starter, this fat pack as it was called back in the day, and take that and see if it's fun. And here we are. So yeah, 2011 was Zendikar.
You just picked up a random Zendikar fat pack ambiently?
Yeah. It had, I brought it out. There were some rules, but not a lot. I opened up a Garrick Wildspeaker because there were like 2010 like cards in there too. And then we didn't know how that worked. Like, I'd cast cancel and we'd put the card back into the person's hand because what does counter target spell mean? No idea what this means. So we were just playing, and my friends kind of stuck with it a little bit, but not as much as dedicating their life to it like I did for the past 13 years.
Yeah. I've noticed that's a pattern among people I talk to. It's like, yeah, someone introduced me or I picked up a pack once or twice, and then my friends kind of left and got on with real lives, and here I am a degenerate with cards. It's like, 30 years on and I'm still carding.
I mean, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
You know what, dude? I was done during Weatherlight. I was like, why would you introduce phasing and flanking? This is ruining Magic forever. It doesn't need any more mechanics. This is going to be the end of the game. And we all quit and got PlayStations, and it was great. And then I kept reading Magic websites and stuff. And I don't know why. It was like the early days of the internet, and that was the only place I had content all the time. So I just kept following it. And then Duels of the Planeswalkers comes out, and I'm like, oh, I remember Magic when I was a kid. And then it's like, oh, this is still fun. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh no, yeah, you just oh no, period. It's still happening. Check out the dojo, then
Oh
Star
yeah.
City, five colors, one source, and just like get on there.
Oh yeah, dude. And reading like Benny's old articles and like all these just ancient people like Mike Flores and things like that.
Yeah.
Ah, magic. But where are you from originally? Are you from Virginia?
Well, I actually grew up in the Rolling Green Hills of Tennessee. Grew up in Cookeville, Tennessee. Then went to college in Knoxville. And then after that, I was like, I've graduated. Maybe I should get a job. And I talked to Jared Silva at Starcy. I'm like, do you think there's like, you guys, because I was like at a 5K, I'm like, do you think you all are hiring? And Jared was like, I think there might be some opening acquisitions coming up. I'll put your name in there and we'll see what happens. And then, I drove out there to Virginia from Knoxville and interviewed with Matt Gargiulo and then got the job. So I moved to Virginia and started at Star City about 2 years after I discovered Magic on acquisition. So yeah, it was pretty.
Okay. Whoa, hang on a second. So you discover Magic accidentally and then immediately start going to tournaments because, like you said, you were at a 5K and you were there enough to know the people at Star City, which
Yeah,
means
well,
you've been to multiple 5Ks.
my first tournament ever was the 5K in Nashville that we drove to from Knoxville, and that was with World Wake. And I was like, man, this Jace the Mind Sculptor card is really cool. And Lotus Cobra gives you mana. And then you have 5 mana with the Fetch on. If you spell pierce, you stop whatever they're trying to do, and then you just win. You win on turn 3. Wow, that sounds sweet. Let's do that. Uh, and I didn't know how the game really worked. I barely understood how Jace worked. I was told on the drive there, no, you can't redirect your own earthquake damage to your Jace. That's not how the rules work.
Boy, would that be a neat trick if you could.
That's what I did with the Jason Chandra dual deck. Anyway, so that was my first tournament ever. I got second, losing to Jacob Baugh in the finals on Elves, and I was like, "Wow, this game seems really easy." And I bought a new laptop with my prize money, and it was great.
What the hell?
It was really fun.
That's a meteoric rise right there.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
were you always a competitive type, or were you just like, this seems like a fun way to pass time?
yeah. In college, I had notions of being a competitive fighting game player. So before Magic, I played a lot of Third Strike and Guilty Gear, and some like maybe some Alpha 3 a little bit, some other fighting games, CVS 2. So I was like very competitive to begin with.
Third Strike is my game of choice.
There was Third Strike was at Evo Japan last year, and some people, some newer players got in through 6 because 6 is awesome, good tutorial, good onboarding, and they're like, is Third Strike like the best Street Fighter? And the answer is no, it's the best fighting game. So,
on a tangent, I will honestly say that Street Fighter 4 Ultimate is, in my opinion, the best Street Fighter, but I think Third Strike is the best fighting game.
Yeah.
It's like, it is just beyond, it's like, it is so different from the other Street Fighters. It is an entirely different game by itself. But like, I don't know, USF4 is just my personal baby, but I've played thousands of hours of Third Strike.
Yep, I could probably play Third Strike and Guilty Gear Accent Core plus R for until I die. I could just take those 2 games. But, 100%. Third Strike is wonderful.
Who'd you ask?
Yeah, my main is Makoto.
Of course.
Yeah,
love her.
Yeah, I'm not going to play Chun-Li. So the game has problems. Like, of course, no game is perfect. It's not particularly well balanced, but that's okay. Like, you don't ask, is this fighting game balanced? That's not what it's about. Despite its flaws, despite the problems, it's still the best fighting game ever. And they got to ride in the first time. That's why they call it Third Strike.
I did a 4.5 hour long podcast on the 3 Street Fighter 3. So y'all can go to Retronauts and listen to that one. That was a good time. Street Fighter is my other jam besides Magic. So it's like, fellow class. It's like, I see you two are a man of culture.
Yeah, I mean, I was thankful. I was very lucky. The Glenn Jones called me in to work on the Street Fighter Secret Lair. And most of those cards,
dude.
Yeah.
You got to work on that?
Yeah, most of the designs are actually my cards that I submitted and we iterated on.
Okay, whatever else I was going to talk about is now not going to happen because we're talking about the Street Fighter Secret Lair for a second because that is literally the single best application of card mechanics to character concept as I've ever seen.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. That was the whole point. We worked really hard on it. I spun my gears just looking at Magic cards and fighting games and how to translate them. And I'm very proud of that release. Yeah, it's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
The Chun-Li having multi-kicker was genius.
So that was
But
actually, yeah. I'm going to
okay,
talk
go
about that for
ahead.
a second. That's my favorite thing. What I did was one of my beginning searches for the collaboration. I looked at every single Magic keyword existing and in the future, like with training, and was like, do any of these tickle my fighting game player brain? And multi kicker is very easy. Chilene's got Hyakuretsu Kyaku. That's what she's known for, is kicking very fast, and multi kicker just makes sense. So thankfully, we found a way to communicate that. Like using instant, I was like, I want to communicate speed. How do we do that? Oh, instance. That's fast. Because normally instance sources are grouped together as like the same card type, but here we just use instance. And then Glenn templated it and made a cool version of it where you do have to pay the cost for the card. So yeah, Chun-Li is probably my favorite
Okay.
design of the ones I've made.
Do you mind if I go through all of them? Because this is
Sure.
literally my favorite secret lair
Oh,
ever.
great. Yeah.
Like I lost my mind when they came out. So like E Honda sumo champion, first off, 100 hand slap. He can up to 100 target creatures get +0/+X, where it's the number of cards in your hand. I love that this dude's got this defensive feel because he's always charged back, and he's always blocking. And how did like that must have been a hard one because 100 hand slap doesn't really translate.
Um, I would say his shtick was kind of easy. Most of the time when you're making Magic card, you want to A, decide the target audience for it, and B, tell the story, and tell
Mm.
one story. You don't want like 17 lines in a card. I mean, the joke is, nowadays cards are, oh, it's, 11 lines of text, 3-line breaks, the casual, smallest font size ever. So with Honda, I was like, what is he known for? He's known for Doskoi, and he's known for 100 hand slapping. Boom. 100 hand slapping is a fun way to communicate flavor with with words you don't see very often on a card. Oftentimes, Mark Roser will talk about Walk the Plank is a great card of involving flavor in a way that isn't very common. And so putting up to 100 target creatures is a fun way to communicate 100 hand slap. So we wanted to make sure that was on there. And then, I actually rather like butt fighting a lot. I think that's a cool twist of how Magic works. And it kind of is in bant, but also black. So basically every color of the red. So I was like, why don't we just do 100 creatures, butt fight, and then template in a way that makes sense. And that's where he
Yeah, I thought it totally fit what I expect out of big sumo guy. He's super tough. He's gonna have fight with your high toughness. That makes sense for
I mean, and he literally fights with his butt with his slam.
Yeah,
like he goes up in the air and butt. So like
jump up and down. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it all works out.
It totally worked. Blanca, ferocious friend here, who is first off, this card is hella fun to play. Like this dude, 3 white, 3 green, red for a 5/5 that has a rolling attack, which says he's got trample as long as you cast 3 or more spells, and electric thunder, which is whenever it becomes target of a spell, he gets +2/+2 till end of turn and deals 2 damage to each opponent. Friend of the show, Joe Johnson, has a Blanca deck that is just insanely powerful. This card rules.
Yeah, Blanca. I think this was one of Glenn's cards. Don't quote me here. But it was one of the few that wasn't mine. It was really hard to communicate Blanca. I worked my brain so hard on how to communicate. Oh, pianoing buttons, trying to get that electricity starting.
Hey, don't do that. It's gonna make the sound effect bad.
Yeah. So pianoing buttons. How do you communicate that on a Magic card? So eventually we ended up with some sort of storm-ish mechanic, which makes sense. Storm is lightning, Blanca's lightning, and then Ari Levitch. Not Ari Levitch. My other Ari, if Ari Zarulnik, was the art director for that, and he was able to sneak in Dan Hibiki.
Yeah, I saw that.
For Blanca, Blanca's best friend, so really happy with that. And rolling attack communicates the flavor of his roll at you.
Yes,
without adding a lot of points to design the card, because it's just trample. That's fine. Trample's like half a mana point or something, and has exciting gameplay. So yeah,
man. So Zangief, the red cyclone, which is 2 and a Junt for a 7/4 that must be blocked to Fable, and if it's your turn, he's indestructible. And then he's got Pile Driver, which is when he does damage to a creature, if that creature was dealt excess damage, that creature's controller sacks a non-creature, non-land permanent. That one felt when I read that, I was so happy because I'm like, this is E Honda pile driving you into a barrel, and the barrel is breaking, and you're sacking something.
You got it. Yeah. I was really hoping he could have summon a bear token for your opponent because he wrestles bears. That's his thing. The product had a bunch of restrictions on it, so we couldn't have any extra tokens. So instead of the bear, we were tasked with communicating a grappling fighting game character to a card game, which is pretty hard because grappling doesn't really work well with the creature combat of Magic. But I did fight really hard to get the black mana pip in there. How do you feel about that, Shivam, as a Street Fighter fan?
I think it was hard. Giving color to these guys was very difficult, but I think I could get it. Like when I look at Zangief and I see black, red, green, I see player one, which is his red, player two, which is his green, and black, which is the color of his hair. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll give it to you. Um, I don't know what color I would have given Geef. Geef would have probably, in my opinion, been like red, green.
Mhm.
Why do you think he got a black pip?
Because I fought really hard to put it on. So putting colors to fighting to characters not in Magic is always very hard.
Mm,
I wanted to holistically look at this, and I didn't want any of the characters to have the same color identity because kind of the commander
sure.
decks blend together, except for Ryu and Kin because they're
Well,
mirrors to
that's
begin
different.
with.
They're the same character.
Yeah, that's different. So with Zangief, I think I agree with you. Like not looking at anything else, I think Geef is a red green character, maybe even mono green, because he's just all about strength. Like strength above all. Look at my glorious body of iron, yada
Yes.
yada. But Blanca is for sure red green. I think
Yes.
without a doubt red green. And I didn't want
Yeah.
them to match. And also really are no black man outline characters in the original World Warriors. So I wanted to at least have 1/5 of
Yeah.
our
Like I
entire
don't.
game to be in there.
I think it's very justifiable for Geef to have a black pip. It's not like it's not so far out of the realm of like okay for me. Like I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks. Like I don't mind that. And also, if we remember from the Pixar movie, being a bad guy doesn't make you a bad guy. Zangief meme. Um,
Exactly.
but yeah, like I think that card plays totally perfectly. Like Guile, for instance, which is one in America,
Yep.
one red, white, and blue 4/4. But this card is where I was like, this is the most inspired. Next to Ryu, this was like the most inspired one, which is like when he enters the battlefield or attack, you get a charge counter. Of course you do. It's Guile, and then you can Sonic Boom or Flash Kick by removing a charge counter. Come on, that is just
Yep. Guile was simultaneously the easiest card. I was like, okay, he's got to be red, white, and blue. He has to be
of course.
have charge counters because that's a magic term that we all know that exactly 1-to-1 maps to a fighting game. And he has the Sonic Boom and Flash Kick. So like
Yeah.
with those pillars in play, the card was easy to design but kind of hard to template. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that human soldier. He goes with a lot of things. Some may say anything.
I see what you did there. Dalsim. This is the one that I think might have been the hardest one because, like, you've got Dalsim Pliant Pacifist, is 2 green white. I would have even made a mono white, but sure, I can see green. And he's a 1/3 with reach. Reach makes sense. Of course it does. Teleport, which is he's got hexproof unless he's attacking. That's like an Ojutai power. That felt okay to me, but I could not figure out, like, I mean, I guess you guys just kind of doubled down on, like, because I was expecting that Dawson would have like more fire breathy things,
Fire.
but you
Mhm.
went with like the extended fierce punch, kind of like, when one or more creatures deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. That doesn't really say anything to me. But the trick is that the power right before it is like whenever a creature you control with reach attacks, untap it and it can't be blocked by things with bigger power, right? So how do you get to Dalsim here? That's a
Yeah,
weird one.
Dawson was kind of tricky. We couldn't really use any fire stuff with him. This was the kind of the art template they wanted. They were like, it'll do strong punch. I'm like, actually, this art with the double punch is a fierce
That's a
punch.
fierce
Thank you.
punch. Come
It's a
on.
standing fierce punch, not a crouching. And it couldn't be fire. Also, you've noticed there are no skulls on his necklace. That was not a thing that we could do. So we couldn't have that, and we couldn't have fire, anything fire related. So what is Dawson without his fire? Well, he's a stretchy
Wait, did
guy.
Capcom come to you guys and say like this is the design we want you to use, or
Yeah, we were not hampered, but like we just wanted this kind of art profile with him punching and not fire oriented. So one cool thing that Matthew Hodgins, another team member, proposed was fist tokens. Like he would create fist tokens to attack, and then they die into combat because like you can't hit Dawson with just his hands. There's no. I mean, there is a hurt box on his hands, but flavorfully, he's
Sure.
way back here punching you, so you can't hit him. But again, no tokens, so we just doubled down with let's just have him be a reach lord and just be all reachy all the time, far away, punching you.
I mean, I think it's a cool design because we didn't have a reach lord before, and it's fun. It's a fun deck to make.
Dalsim of the spiders, because
Yeah, and it's like
spiders love him.
he's anti-air, baby. Just knock him out of the sky. Of course, he's
Yeah.
got reach. Ken and Ryu were genius designs. Like the fact that they're red and white, the fact that their P and T is opposite of each other, so it's 2/4 for Ryu and 4/2 for Ken, and Ken being able to gain first strike, and having his Shoryuken be his power, which is when he does combat damage, you cast a sorcery spell from your hand, and prowess, so you can make him bigger with casting other things. So it's like, yeah, that was a genius design.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how Ryu and Ken worked. I'm glad Glenn let me mirror the power and toughness. That was very important. The other thing I was very proud of with Ryu and Ken, training wasn't out yet, but
Mm,
when I looked at future keywords, I'm like, oh, training. That's like his whole character concept is just training to be the
yeah.
best world warrior. That's what he's about. So him having training, which is a permanent bonus, and Ken
Oh yeah,
having
I should read
prowess.
Ryu. I should read Ryu. Like 2 and a white, 2/4. He's got training, and then he's got Hadouken, which is hands down the single best power of anything on any Magic card because it's 4 and a red, untap, untap, which is
Yeah,
exactly the quarter circle forward. And then you discard a card and he deals damage, whatever. Untap. When I saw that untap on the Hadouken for Ryu, I was like, these guys know what the hell
they
they're
get it.
doing. This is 100%. I'm on board for whatever you got.
Yep,
That
and
was,
that again was Matthew Hodgins of Dulcine Fist Tokens. He came. We all submitted our designs, and he put the untapped token. And when we all saw that, we all just knew, okay, it's definitely that's going to be what Hadoken does is the untapped symbol. So that was awesome on his part. He's
yeah. So
awesome
you
for
were
that.
saying about training and prowess.
Oh yeah. So Ryu training, he gets bigger permanently. Ken's prowess, he gets bigger. It's not permanent; it's ephemeral. And Ryu is trained for the long game, and Ken is more flashy, showy,
Yes,
and like
yes,
it
yes.
matches their personalities, but mirrors. And I was really proud of trying to
I
communicate
love
that.
that.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so
yeah.
yeah. And then of course Hadouken being the bonus card rules. I love it. Um, dude, home run, home run. It's like hands down my favorite. One of my favorite products Watsy has put out. That's when I learned, like, I was super down on Secret Layers until I saw the Street Fighter one, and that's when I got it. And that's when I was like, okay, okay,
Yeah,
I see what you're doing now.
I've been trying to help out in my time in my near decade at Wizards. I worked on a lot of cards for Universes Beyond, which this is Universes
Mm,
Beyond and a Secret Lair, and I worked a lot on Alchemy and any Magic players like human beings like gamers always want change, but they hate everything new. So trying to convince players of these new things was hard, and you can't really change people's minds with facts, but you can change them with feelings. And if you make for every card I make that changes one person's mind, you know what? Maybe this alchemy stuff, maybe this universe is beyond isn't so bad because they get it. They understand these cards. My mission was accomplished. So I just got to change people's mind one card at a time. And I'm glad Street Fighter was received so well.
yeah, because like honestly, if you had started with Street Fighter instead of Walking Dead, I think the entire tenor of the program would have been received completely differently. Like putting out Walking Dead first, and I've spoken about this before because it did not do me any favors as a member of the Commander team dealing with people being very angry about what you guys were doing and not what. Like I'm like I'm just a guy. What do you want me to do?
Through the messenger, yeah.
Yeah. But I think that the tide has turned on that, and that like as we're recording, the people have announced a Hudson and Miku secret layer, and I'm like, that is definitely not for me. And where 5 years ago, as me would have gone off on like a very lengthy tirade on Twitter, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? There's a bunch of folks out there who are probably really happy about this. I'm just gonna let them buy it. And
Yeah.
it's not my problem anymore. It's just enjoy yourselves, have fun.
Hatsune Miku des. Yeah, this is, I think, a side effect, or I guess something that happens because for the longest time, people who've been in franchise with Magic as long as you have, for certainly, everything Magic made was for them. It was for the Magic player. And now that Magic has grown so much because of these boats that they were sending out of like trying to get new people from things. Now everyone is so many more people joining Magic, but not every Magic product is made for a Magic player. And I'm sure you've heard people say that before. But there's so much happening that it's awesome to see where it goes. I'm excited. It's excited to see for sure.
Yeah. I think it's good. I think growth of the game, expanding the audience is good for all of us. The more Magic players there are, the more people there are for us to play with.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah.
how many games have we seen where the community just drills down to like a handful of old geezers who were just like the last ones holding the fort, and it's like, well, there's nobody new coming in. The game's got no community. Community with a game without community dies.
Yep.
I don't want Magic to die.
I mean, a
I
game
like this.
without new players dies.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you see that a lot with like the first go around versus system. It's kind of come back to the universes, but the first go around, the better player basically always won chess style. And so when you're a new player starting off, you can't ever beat anybody. All you do is lose. And we had so much research done where players who won their first couple games of any game, we were looking at Magic the Gathering, but of any game, they're going to come back because they won. So we want to make sure people win and feel feeling. And with Magic overall, the best players in the world we saw, over last weekend, they still win despite a Magic being such a high variance game, which is one of its greatest strengths.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, this is going to come out in like the end of June, so people are not going to, or like mid-June or something. So folks are not going to realize we're talking about Pro Tour Seattle. So that would have been like 2 months ago or something like that. But that's jumping ahead. Let's go back to you for a second.
I love going back to me.
So you basically played Magic for 2 years before you decided to just jump over to making content.
Basically,
what were you thinking of doing at Star City?
I was in acquisition, so I would go to events and buy and sell cards. But which was funny because I had just started the game like a year and a half, 2 years before. So they're like, "Are you sure you know what like a Mishra's workshop versus a Mishra's factory is?" And I'm like, thankfully, I have a slightly eidetic memory, like sort of photographic. I just used the wrong film, basically. So like I can look at stuff and just recall kind of glimpses in my head. I'm like, oh, this symbol, this is Urza Saga, and Urza's Legacy is the little like hammer, and Destiny is the Erlenmeyer flask. There we go. What's so hard about this? And just memorize the cards.
I still can't do that. For some of those old sets, I know which block they're in, but I couldn't tell you the exact set that like.
Yep.
I guess I could now actually if I sat and really thought about it, but just not like off the cuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I guess that's a good way to familiarize yourself with every card in the game when you're going to its SCG show and someone shows up with like 1,000 cards and says like, pick through these and buy them from me.
Yep. They'll plop down a shoebox that has, mostly nothing, but sometimes you'll see like a Sylvan Library or something other time. And you're just like, whoa, this is, I mean, that's a commonly known. Or sometimes, the common thing would do is after like a Legacy Open or something, they would throw down their dredge deck. They're just like, I'm never playing this deck again. So I bought a lot of dredge decks in my day because that's just what people do.
Dredge is, it's a very hard deck to play.
Well, it was hard, and it was pretty easy to acquire back in those days. The most expensive card, the most desirable card hasn't changed, Lion's Eye Diamond. But back then, it was much easier to have 4 of those.
Yeah, and Bazaar Baghdad, right?
Yeah, when you could play
I guess vintage, not Legacy. Mm-hmm. I loved listening to Legacy tournaments. I'm not going to lie. Legacy and Vintage, listening to people play those is far more fun to me than actually playing them because I just don't have the wherewithal to sit through a Vintage stack of like spells and stuff. But how did you get involved with actually making content then?
So at Star City, I was in acquisitions, and they had just started doing their Star City Versus series where like Todd Anderson and Brad Nelson would play, standard decks and put on YouTube. And I was like, well, this is cool. But what if we did it for EDH? Because EDH had it was still EDH during that time, and the Commander product and renaming happened while I was there. So why don't we do this for EDH? Like do EDH first.
How did you get into Commander? Awesome. I mean, how did you get into EDH then? If you just started 2 years ago or whatever.
At the local game store that I eventually went to, my first pre-release was World Wake. Somebody had opened, like, it was the Hidden Treasure was still around or whatever. And so somebody opened up, someone's like, I opened up a Bayou, and everyone's like, woo, cheering. And I'm like, wow, this community is so friendly. Some guy is just saying some card and everyone is cheering for him. That's amazing. I found my people.
Some card.
At that event, people are like, well, in between rounds, they were playing this big deck. I'm like, oh, they've got a huge deck. That's awesome. What is this? Oh, it's EDH. You like choose a leader and then you make decks. I'm like, oh, like a fighting game. I can like customize my own like fighting game, so I can make Makoto in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike and give her a fireball maybe or something to go with her Hayate.
What would a Makoto deck look like? Oh man, it'd be very slow.
Well, so Makoto is awesome because she has basically no frames of animation and movement in her neutral stance outside of her scarf around her neck. But then her Hayate is the quickest move in the game. It's probably the furthest. You have all those smear lines and the blurring and teleportation. So she's simultaneously the slowest and the fastest. So that'd be a cool thing to think about. But yeah, all these people were just playing EDH, and I was like, oh, I can make my own. And then I looked up Niv Mizzet, this cool dragon wizard. This guy is so cool. Oh my God. Wait, doesn't he come with Curiosity? And I could put Curiosity in my deck. And I played it. And the second I put Curiosity on my dragon wizard, I looked at the faces of the people I was playing with. And that taught me all I needed to know about how I wanted to move forward with the format.
Everybody has that day where you put Curiosity on a Niv Mizzet and you're like, oh, wait,
Oh, the rules
Oh
have
wait.
changed. Yeah. The we all come to normally the rules of a game, what's the number one rule? You play to win. Not so much with Commander. That's not
Mhm.
generally the rules that people want to do, and you have to figure that out, which is in my mind still the hardest thing to do with Commander is making sure everyone's on the same page in the novel that is
I
playing
mean,
Commander with three other people.
that's been my challenge for 3-4 years since joining the CAG, has been to try to encourage people to get on the same page with each other. Oh, and I will say this much, and this is just personal kudos to myself and to the team that I work with on the CAG and the RC. We have done a phenomenal job over the past couple of years of getting people to, like, a lot of pub stomping and a lot of reports of people just having game mismatches have gone down significantly since we said, hey guys, maybe if you just talk to each other for a second, you don't need to give a PowerPoint presentation, you don't need to give like your whole life story, you could just sit there and say like, yo, this is the kind of game I want to play, and they'd be like, yo, this is the kind of game I want to play, and it's like, all right, we don't have to play with each other, we can go find tables that are better for us. Boom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So many bad games of Magic go away.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your and the CAGs and the RC's help in shaping Commander to the format that I dreamed of back when I started. It's everything I want to like. I talked a lot of the RC and stuff a whole lot, and yeah, I know it's in the right place thanks to y'all's help. So thank you for someone who's put a lot of their soul into the format as well. So yeah,
Yeah, you worked a lot on Commander products too, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I have about no magic card design in a vacuum. There are hundreds, literally 100 people touch every magic card. But if you look at like where the initial idea, whose brain came out of, I have about 100 cards to my name, quote unquote, that I
Isn't
can
that
say I
cool?
was designing. It
Like
is very
that had
cool.
to feel cool.
It was my dream for the longest time. I remember when Innistrad came out, the first one, yet again of three, and looking at like Insectile Aberration and Delver Seekers. Wow, it'd be so amazing to make these magic cards, but that'll never happen. That dreams like that can't happen. And yeah, here we are.
Okay, so like you go there and you were at Star City for quite a while, weren't you?
About 3.5 years, yeah.
Yeah, like you put out a lot of videos because I watched a lot of them, and they were great. It was really just fun. That was some of the earliest Commander content I can personally remember. I'm sure there are more than that, but like in terms of watching on videos, that was like some of the first times I was watching other people play Commander, which is wild to me to think about. But I remember like, so how did you get poached to get to WotC? Because that was a big deal when that happened, or at
Yeah,
least for
the story's
content fans.
pretty. Yeah, the story's pretty funny. You know, I worked on Commander Versus with everybody there. The Star City crew was awesome. Jeremy Nolan stuff. Danny West. Like the great thing about Commander Versus, much like this conversation you have, Jim, on Casual Magic, it's just two friends talking to each other with magic happening in the background,
Right?
and that's kind of the fun. Like you said, the joys we discovered in this game. It's not Magic Without the Gathering. So that's what was great about that. And I did that for like 2.5 years. Did the YouTube thing. And I was like, you know what? I love this game. I love making the content so much. I want to make the content that people make content with. So I walked in the office and told them, you know what? I've had an awesome job, but I like to put in my 2 weeks so that I could just quit my job. And I packed up my little Nissan Versa and drove across the continent without knowing anybody in Seattle and having any job prospects lined up.
Oh no. What?
Yeah, it was the most dangerous thing I've ever did. Bravest is one way to look at it. Stupid is the other way. And moved out here and was like, my goal is to work at Wizards of the Coast and work on Manage the Gathering. And then I just applied there and drove there. Totaled my car on the way to my first interview. It wasn't great, but then I went to a different. I went to another interview the week after that with my roommate. Took me there, and I was interviewing for a completely different position. I was applying for a customer service rep. Tier 2 to talk about like D&D 4th edition questions and maybe some Magic online stuff. But then when I got there the second time, we're see you here for interviewing for digital event coordinator for Magic Online. And I was like, yes, I am. I love
Whatever
Magic
you want
Online.
me to interview for.
Whatever you want me, I got it. And I did it well enough that that was my first job. So it all worked out. I had a dream of working for Wizards and making Magic cards, and I guess I accomplished it. So here we are.
So you started working at Magic Online?
Yeah, the digital event coordinator
internal?
was basically like the head judge for Magic Online for all the premier events like PTQs and such, which still happen. And then we would be, live service support to the players in those tournaments and work on all that.
Wow,
So some say, so I've qualified hundreds of people for the Pro Tour, more than most any other judge.
that seems like a very high stress position. Like when
It
people's
can be,
stuff starts
yes.
breaking.
Yep. Magic Online, as you know, was made by Leaping Lizards. They started in 1999, so it was started development in the last millennium. So we had a lot of tools, but you can't do everything when a system has been made. The Magic Online, they never dreamed in a million years it'd be used for as many Magic cards are on it for this long.
No, Magic Online, it definitely reads of a system that was built in 1990X to do one thing for a short time that would then be replaced by a much better program that never came. And so it's like you could tell the thing is being held together by glue and prayers and like bubble gum and
It
like a paper clip and like 3 blocks that some child is holding up, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I mean the team. When I worked with the team, when I was the business lead for Magic Online for a couple years, that team was the hardest working, most passionate team I've ever worked with. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew how to eke out the most reward, most like effort, like most results from the least amount of resources possible. And I loved working with that team so much. And I mean, Magic Online. I think the narrative has come around a lot on Magic Online. The team's put in so much work making quality of life features, doing what it needs to do best, what Magic Online
Mm-hmm.
can do best with the rise of Arena, MTG Arena, and everything. So I am really happy
Yeah,
I got to work with
people dunk on Midgo a lot, but when you think about how many cards and interactions and things that software has to handle to make sure it goes flawlessly for infinite languages across the world, 24 hours a day, people playing Commander, people playing Modern, people playing Vintage, I mean, it is an impossibly difficult challenge.
Yeah, Magic Online is run by some really passionate, awesome people, and it is running the most complicated game of all time. Like we have proven reports that Magic: The Gathering is the most complex game. Passes the Turing test, not the Mike Turing test, but the Turing test. Um, and that program is just amazing at what it can do with the every hundreds of new cards being added every year. So it's awesome what we see from it.
Yeah, I don't know. Magic Online is amazing. It's a very, I mean, Magic itself is just such an insanely complicated game with so many interactions, so many things coming out at any given time. Trying to like put together Arena, trying to get put together. I mean, even putting together a normal set is just like so complicated. But one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show is because among the jobs you held at Wizards was maintaining the cube for Arena. And cubing is one of my secret favorite ways to play Magic
Oh,
because it's like the coolest, weirdest things you can do from the entire history. It's like it's the promise of Commander and the promise of Limited put together. Like, here are the best cards from the history, or the weirdest or the most synergistic in a box. Figure out how to make this work. And I love that. I love trying to figure out why this card from like M12 and this card from Nemesis are now going to break the game together.
yeah, exactly. My first cube I ever made, the Live the Dream cube, was in fact 11 of my commander decks all shoved into one big format. So
That's so weird.
yeah, yeah, it's like you said, cube is basically commander, but one person makes the possibility of all the decks for all the people playing. So you're already all on the same page to begin with, which is awesome, and you can all make your own kind of commander decks on the fly, depending on the kind of cube you're doing. But yeah, cube is at this point my favorite format. So like, I can play it all the time.
Yeah, so I'm actually really curious because one of the things I've noticed about you, because we've gotten to play a few times, and your decks are always the most like left field decks I've seen, doing just insanely bizarre, like attacking Magic from directions that I was not expecting, or like, didn't you have the one like deck that had like you put all your commanders down face down, you make somebody pick one at the beginning,
Yep,
like
yep. That was my blue black deck. That back when this was kind of hard to do. Every card play your opponent's cards. Because I had such a hard time balancing commander decks to other commander decks. I'm sure what's your deck rated at 7? Okay, 7.0 to 7.9. Like we're in that range. So I wanted a deck that could base its power level off of other decks. So playing other people's cards with kind of inefficient cards like Grinning Totem of years past. So for a deck without a theme, because the theme is what your opponent is playing, I'll just put every single blue black legend in the game, Princess Lucrezia and all, and had my opponents pick it before I started playing with that deck.
I love that idea because when I saw that I was like, wow, this really like it lets you take one deck that exists and then just at least each time you play it gets a different iteration, because not only are you getting the upside of like playing whatever's on the pod, which is always going to be a unique occurrence because those four decks are never going to play each other ever again, but also modifying the top tier because each blue black legend did something slightly different and cared about some other weird vector, and it makes such a remarkable way to get variance out of a pile of 100 cards. That
Exactly.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love that.
There's a John. Thank you. I was very happy with that. We did this to ourselves. Is what eventually came to be known. Um, there's a genre of game called roguelike, which I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
people listening here know. Magic the Gathering is a roguelike. When you draft the deck, you're drafting a strategy as you go on. So in constructed, you want the most consistency possible. You want to do the thing your deck's built to do to win. That's your goal, is to win. But in Commander, my goal isn't always to win. Winning is something that happens because you want to play the next game. So I want to increase
Mm-hmm.
my variance in that format and get a new expression, like you said, every single game. So like it secretly was like my favorite deck to play, as long as everyone was okay with like me touching their cards with my grubby Cheeto gamer hands. So I could have a different experience every time. Yeah.
I I think you and I come from the same page here. Like we come at it from the same angle, which is like the play itself is the fun part. The winning is just starting a new play, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just like whatever. People get real mad at me. It's like, what do you mean? How do you not care about winning? I'm like, look, I care. I'm not saying
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm just saying it's not the top of. It's not the reason I'm playing. Like the reason
Mhm.
I'm playing is because I've got this really cool 14 card synergy that's going to do something bananagrams if it works. And if it works, then I won. I don't care what else happens.
Yeah,
Right?
like when like from the project management playbook, it's like what are your goals? When you do anything, what are your goals? Like
Mm,
people need to think about that when they engage with anything. Like my goal in fighting games for the longest time was to be as good as I possibly could to beat other people. And then it became, you know what? What if I should just be better than yesterday's David? What if I just like beat the previous version of me? And now it's just to have fun with friends. And that
mhm.
those goals change, as you get older. With Commander, I have a goal to win. It's like goal number 4. But like, I
Right.
do want to win. Like if someone's at 3 and I'm at 3, I'm not gonna lightning bolt myself. Like that's not gonna happen. But like
Unless it's
it's certainly
really
not the
funny.
number yeah. Certainly not the number one thing I'm gonna do. So yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it's just like, I don't know. That's why I think I've always appreciated like the decks that you play, because like you always come at it, the game, from an angle of what's the most interesting and fun thing we could be doing here, as opposed to just what is the most efficient way I can win. And like I dig that a lot because I think it's easy to make an efficient way to win. It's easy to make like a Docksider or something like that. It's hard to make like a weirdo card that is suddenly like that gets. It is very hard to design a card that four people can look at and come away with four different ways that they want to build decks out of. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to build a deck or a card or a concept that is just like so wildly open ended that it leaves people making infinite different like possibilities. And I think that's like one of my favorite things about Magic.
Yeah, that is a good source of joy. Like when, as a game designer, your whole job is to make people feel things, probably good. So like when people roll a d20 for playing Dungeons and Dragons, oh, you rolled a 20, you crit. Wow, joy was created by the mere fact of rolling a die. Isn't that wonderful? So like when you see like I have a 2-lane Teller of Tales deck that's alliteration. It's 2
Mm.
lanes. So when people see me cast Soldevi Sentry, a card they've never seen before, why is that in here? Because it's alliterative. It's Soldevi Sentry with 2-lane Teller of Tales, and that just makes people smile. And that's what it's all about.
Soul Devi Sentry? What the hell is that?
Exactly. You gotta making like anytime someone has to look at a card, and not because it came out in last year's Commander product, but because it came out in like 90 in alliances, 95 or whatever. That's what it's all about.
Soul Devi. What the hell? Why would you? Why would you even play this card? Oh, I remember this dude. I saw this art. Soul Devi Sentry is from Alliances. It's a 1-mana 1/1 artifact creature, and it says, pay 1, regenerate this dude. Target opponent may draw a card. I remember this came up in like one of my randoms once, and I was just like, what in the blazes is going on with this
Yeah,
card?
it's alliterative, so it goes in the deck. It's a creature for 1 mana, so you trigger True Lane, and it has politics built in because you let other people draw cards, and it can it can block and regenerate, kind of be a wall. It's perfect. It's the perfect Magic card.
It's such a weird, and the art is just so like, it looks like Vision from the Marvel movies or something like that.
It does
It's just,
look
it's just
Vision-esque.
he's just hanging out there going like, yes, you
Uh,
can have a card.
A dreadful invention. What ease is there under the watchful eye of cold steel? Yeah, it's great.
Man, you must have had a lot of fun digging into weirdo cards in through the history
I
of Magic.
think I've looked at every Magic card about 7 times. I think is about where I'm at. And then the cards from, 2000 and up when they became very strong, about probably 14 times.
Can we actually talk about what it's like when you were designing, for instance, the Arena Cube? How did you go about that process? Like, did you create it from scratch, or was there like a cube existent that you then edited, or how does that work?
Yeah, there was Arena Cube that I gave feedback on before I controlled it, quote unquote. That's not really what it is. It's just like the steward of the Arena Cube. So
Mm.
there was a pattern already, but like anything, I wanted to look at our goals. What's the goal of the cube? And thankfully, the goal is mainly make sure people have a good time and get them to play it. So that's great. But I also there's also other cubes on Arena. There's the Arena Cube, which is kind of the general this is kind of cube on Arena. So in the historic card pool, I suppose timeless card pool nowadays, format I did get to name. One of my last things I did was name that format timeless. And then we
Neat.
have the Tinker's Cube, which was Jonathan Perlman, a data scientist at WotC. He kind of made that cube, and that is like kind of the Ginny Johnny cube. And then I made the Chromatic Cube, which was the version of my Live the Dream cube, which ended up being the Timmy Tammy cube. So we had a nice Spike, Timmy, Tammy, Ginny, Johnny trifecta of cubes on Arena. So I'm really happy that's how it ended up. It kind of happened up by happenstance, but that's great.
Yeah, that explains why I enjoyed the Chromatic Cube so much. As a very, very Timothy myself, I want to swing things. I want to play big things. I want big booms to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also why I like Commander, really. But yeah, like how? I mean, it's weird without an example in hand. But like, I'm always curious. Like, how do you decide what card is good enough for a cube when you've got this whole panoply to choose from?
Yeah, I look at every card available. So Arena, thankfully in Arena, it's just timeless. So it's, like a couple thousand cards, not 20,000. So that's great. And I think about, what's my power band? That's an easy one to grok at least. I want cards that are stronger than Merfolk of the Pearl Trident, but weaker than Ancestor Recall. So you
Like,
have
do
this
you go
range
into that? Do you go into that with the idea of like these archetypes I want to cover, and then try to find cards for that, or do you like just build from? I mean, I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about cube design till the cows come home, and they're not coming home yet. But yeah, do you have a good stuff cube that's just the best cards ever? Or do you have like a real synergy based archetype cube with those 2 colored archetypes, maybe 3, and you slot things into that? So the Arena Cube is very simple in the fact that really I'm just choosing to play with the strongest cards available to me, kind of like how the Vintage Cube is just the strongest cards available to me, and that's kind of the guiding philosophy for that because. Despite me actually personally not enjoying Vintage Cube that much, I think we are paying for the sins of the father of playing with the Power 9. It is the most popular cube by far because people like playing with powerful cards, and that's kind of the philosophy for the Arena.
Look, it's the only place we can play with Moxen, like real Moxes, right? Like
You can play Vintage?
Nobody's playing Vintage.
Hey, listen, after all 16 people play Vintage at Gen Con, they all go out for dinner, and it's an awesome time.
Yeah, but like Vintage Cube, at least it's like it's what it's like every card from 1993 and 1994, and then 2020 on forwards.
Yeah, well, they learned that maybe Ancestral Recall versus Healing Salve isn't the best like dichotomy in colors, and then 23 years later, we're like, oh yeah, Oko, Thief of Crowns, that's a good card, right? So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I look at some of the decisions that were made in the history of Magic, and I'm just like, that sure was a choice somebody made.
Well, it's the thing about that is like there are so many decisions that have to happen for Magic to happen nowadays. That, like, for example, the companions were flavorfully awesome, and the story cool and limited, amazing. The art is cool. But they had too many goals on their backs and too many things and just crumpled from the weight of trying to hit all these things that everybody wanted out of them. So that was a good lesson from that. So like,
yeah,
there's so much complex things happening that eventually something's going to break. And like companions did that, Oko did that, and that's just how it goes sometimes.
Dude, companions are a sore spot for me because Lutri is the first otter in Magic. Why would you put it on the one card that is 100% never going to make it legality in Commander? Because the trigger on Lutri is just have like every card in your deck has to be singleton. I'm like, come on. You guys know that Commander is the most popular format. Why would you make a companion that is literally free include to Commander? But if it had been like an ooze or like an elemental or some, I don't know, something like Obosh or whatever, nobody would have cared. It would have been
Yeah,
like,
but
okay,
it's a
fine, it's
cute
broken,
blue
whatever.
red
But
otter.
it's a
She's
cute
so
blue red
awesome there.
option. And then
Yes.
you're like, oh God,
Yep.
now you're taking the cutest thing in the world, sticking it on something that's got to be guaranteed ban, and now I've just got 4 years of headaches.
But you can play Lutri in Pioneer. There you go. There's still avenues to play Lutri. And we still have rule zero conversations. Like if someone just uses Lutri as their commander,
Yeah, if
maybe.
somebody uses Lutri as a commander, nobody's going to cry about it. It's
There you
fine.
go. There's always ways around it with those willing to find a way.
I thought that putting the companions into
It was
no,
March
whatever,
Against the Machines.
March Against the Machine, March
Yeah.
of the Machines. The March of the Machines, I was like, War of the Machines? No, that's
Yeah,
not it.
War of the
March of the Machines on the bonus sheet was cool because it made limited interesting and fun, and you could play with them in a new situation and give them a second chance.
Second Chance and sweet new art.
Yes, so good. My son was like looking. I took my son to Command Fest, and he got to go enjoy himself and see everything. And he was like, "Oh my god, Papa, I want to get this!" And I'm looking at it, and it's like, etched foil Gigantha serialized. I'm like, no,
Nah.
I don't. It's a pretty card, but I think we're gonna leave it there.
Mhm.
Yeah. What would you say is the most fun thing you got to work on?
I would. Street Fighter was really fun, but it was a very small time span. It was like a month and a half of work. That's the only time we had for it. I would say, product wise, probably being on vision design for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
What a home run that set was.
That was very fun for me. They pulled me in. I asked to be on it, and they pulled me in to be the professional Japanese culture expert, despite being Caucasian white guy. I went to school for international business and Japanese. I did go to school for that, but I really just
also
like
did
video
that.
games and anime. Yeah.
International relations in Japanese.
Yeah, nice. There we go. Our book keeps having the same pages in it, you know. Yeah, so that was really cool. I could basically looked at every single anime ever made and thought about what are the important parts from these shows and how I could communicate that on a Magic card while being legally distinct from the anime.
Were you the one that gave us "You Are Already Dead"?
That is one of my cards. Yes, that was the easiest card. I put the name in there. I put the text in there, and I'm like, I'm sure they're going to change it. They didn't change it, and oh my god, Moshin Deru just lived on.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yep.
I mean, that was like one of the ones where I was like, oh, they knew what they were doing. They understood the brief.
Yeah, thanks, but they didn't change it. And now, every time anytime somebody casts demonic consultation and they name that card, I'm like, I've done my job.
That is definitely the card that I use whenever it's a name a card just ambiently. I'm like,
yep,
you are already dead.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah.
Oh god. Oh my god, I love Kamigawa. So I think Kamigawa is one of my favorite sets of all time. Easy peasy. Like that set was so much fun to play. That set was so much fun to look at. Everything marketing did around it was 100% home run. I don't know. I mean, it's weird to say like Magic peaked with Kamigawa, but really Magic peaked with Kamigawa because like it got followed up by Capenna, and that was like that's Mercadian Masks tier disappointment.
Oh well, Goldchain for the first half of designing Neon Kamigawa, we didn't even know it was going to be a Kamigawa set.
That must have been a weird transition.
It was. We were hoping it'd be Kamigawa, but we couldn't make it that. Because we weren't sure if the community would take well to another Kamigawa set. Because the first time it came around, there was some people on both sides of the fence on how that set was taken in. So, yeah, that was very fun.
Yeah, you guys must have been so gratified by the audience reception of that set.
Oh, I certainly was. Anytime someone's would quote a card that I designed or an archetype that I helped give input on balance, being black and white, being the fusion of the modern folks in the spiritual side, I was like, oh, I love it. I'm glad I'm able to put more joy in the world and bring people together through Magic the Gathering, which has always been my goal. And yeah, it was wonderful.
Where are you at on Sol Ring?
On which one?
Sol Ring.
Sol Ring?
Mm-hmm.
The 1 mana artifact, tap add CC? Where am I at on it? What do you think of
that card?
It's really strong. I suppose you're probably asking about where does it belong in the format of Commander and in Commander decks.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about like grand scheme of things. What do you think about the card Soul Ring?
I think it wouldn't be made nowadays. It is very
Sure, it
strong.
wouldn't.
I honestly would. It makes every time I look at Soul Ring, I think about how there was never a colorless 1 mana artifact tap to add C.
Hmm.
Just half a Soul Ring. That was never made. They never got that far. They went from that to like jeweled load, like jeweled bird or jeweled lotus, the
Yeah,
0 mana one. Yeah.
Monocrypt.
No, man. Oh my god. Cut this part out.
Oh, wasn't there that one glove in Alliances or something?
Jeweled Amulet,
Yeah, Jeweled Amulet was rad.
which is 0 every other turn, pay 1, get a
Yes,
mana later on.
that was like
Yes,
a very weak coalition relic.
sort of. Yeah, I have died at this card before. Soul Ring is kind of like if you've ever played a roguelike, so like a Slay the Spire or something, and there's just one best. There's a card that you know is the best, you know it's the strongest, and you pick it because you are safe in your assumption that you're doing the right thing if your goal is to win. Soul Ring is that thing, and it gives those crests in playing games. We're like, oh, that was a Soul Ring game. It's broken up the murk of turn 2 Signet, turn 3 4 mana Commander, turn 5 play the spell. Things are different because a Soul Ring happened. And in the context of Commander, the multiplayer can kind of help fix it. You're going to have some Soul Ring games, but thankfully, Soul Ring isn't like a card that drags the game on forever. It does accelerate the game to
Yes.
a win state. And that is the goal of almost every Magic card, is to accelerate that win state. So,
Except for like Winter Orb.
every Magic card made since I worked at Wizards. So, yeah, I very much dislike Winter Orb. I hate cards like that.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
just like cards that make the game go long, unless you have a win condition. That's why Farewell is like one of those designed to just makes me grumpy. I'm like, at least Cyclonic Rift has a win. Like
yeah,
you've
you
got
kill them
creatures,
when
you
you
can
cast it.
win.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, don't make cards that are going to make the game take another hour. Please, let's not. What do you think about the Commander format? Like in the time since you got to WotC and now, Commander has exploded, right?
Sure
Like it
has.
has gone supernova. It has taken over everything that Wizards does and changed the nature of design and like really the motivation behind what a lot of you guys do. What do you think of the format these days?
So we'll take a step back. Before I started working for WotC at Star City, like we talked about, when there was Star City Standard versus, I was like, I think EDH is going to be amazing. It is my favorite format. I went there with 5 EDH decks, left Star City with like 13. And nobody believed in EDH. Nobody played it. It's a casual format for casual Magic fans. We are quote unquote real Magic fans. Thankfully, that has been changed a lot in the past 2 years. That line of thinking. And every time I gave somebody a deck and I played them, they went then and built another deck, every single one. So I believed in this format earlier than most, but just like way back when, because I knew it was the most fun way to engage with Magic the Gathering if your goal wasn't to win. So I'm so happy to see Commander latching on. I've been trying to change the philosophy of the game the past 13 years since I started, that Commander is an amazing way to play the format and just have fun with your friends. Because it's, we've all said it's about the Gathering a million times. We're going to keep saying it until the day we die. But it is so fun to hang out with your friends and new friends you haven't made yet, friends you'll make through the game, where all my friends have come from basically for the past 13 years. And I believed in it so much. I spent so much time and effort trying to change the narrative, making Commander an awesome way to engage with the game. So I've been working on that so long, and thank you for all your help in working for that. How I think about it nowadays, I'm glad that people have found a way to hang out and play Magic the Gathering with other people in a way that makes them happy. That's what I've always wanted. Because like before, what Magic events were there? There were Grand Prix. What did you do? Well, you went and you play in the Grand Prix. And then on Sunday, because you didn't make day 2, because most people didn't, how math works, you drafted. And that was it. That was what you did. And now look at Magic Cons and Command Fest and all these awesome things that you can do now. That's great. And Commander is helping bring that to the forefront. So I'm so happy. And because Commander has exploded the game, WotC can put so many more resources into making the game better. Not just Commander, but the general umbrella of capital A Magic the Gathering. So I'm so happy how it's turning out to be.
Exactly. I mean, like, look, I remember when we would go to GPs as casual fans and have to sit in the back, or even worse, get kicked out of the venue and sit outside in the food court to play Commander games with each other so that the real Magic players could play their draft pods in the back rows. And now we have moved from the far back of the room to the entire room.
Yeah.
You know?
Now you have a command zone like at Grand Prix
Yeah.
and at Magic Cons and such.
No, now
And
we have a tournament zone for all the non-commander players.
yeah, they have their walled garden. Yeah,
The
I mean,
little pen.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I definitely was a very try-hard competitive Magic player when I started because that's all I knew. That was what I was told how to play the game, was to play in a PTQ, so then you could play in the Pro Tour, and then you play the World Championship, and that was the game. And I'm like, well, I play Street Fighter Third Strike. Let me at him, like let me in, and that's how I started. So I definitely I've met so many people playing in PTQs and stuff. And then when Commander was starting to get big, like there was one person who I tried getting played called Brian Kibler, and he was not interested at all in playing Commander with me because that was not a format for competitive Magic players. And thankfully, I makes fools of us all, and here we are.
Brian Kibler, aka the current Prince of Commander.
Yep, he's very good at what
Prince
he
consort
does.
Of Commander.
I've always enjoyed playing Magic with him. Thankfully, I can play Commander with him in Olivia now. So,
yeah, dude, he's a joy. Did you when you were at Star City, you probably ran into Sheldon a lot too, right?
Yep, I did run into Sheldon sometimes. I actually ran into Sheldon most when he did his tenure at WotC working on Strixhaven Commander and such. And we would hang out. We'd go to the Chinese restaurant on Thursdays after board game night at WotC, play some Big Two with people, and then I would drive him back to his apartment and stuff, and we would chat about Magic and everything. So I got to know him. I'm very thankful of the time I got to spend with that man.
The void left by Sheldon, we are still going to be feeling for a long time to come, I think, because like dude had a huge impact on what we do.
Yep, I visited him last year in Florida. Gavin and Jim were there too. They wrote articles about this stuff, and the time I spent there, I won't ever forget. I won't forget any of the time I spent with him, and the ripples he's made, not just on the Magic community, but on me personally, cannot be overstated. And I think about him every day. I think about him a lot, and how I could make him proud with what I do with my life. So, yeah.
Good time, man. Sheldon was a good dude. We fought a lot, but in the kind of way that like Sheldon enjoyed that. It's like he loved having a combat, and so I'm like, all right, let's go.
He did have a rapier wit, and if you don't hone the blade, don't hone the edge of your blade, it will get dull. And Sheldon was very good at honing blades.
The man enjoyed having intellectual adversaries, not to be mean about, but to just be like, I need to be challenged. I need to have my ideas bounced off of somebody so that I can make sure they're the right ones. And I'm like, yeah, that's an amazing way to live.
He studied Shakespeare literature, real life literature, everything else. And if you are a king running a country and your panel of advisors agrees with you with everything you say, your kingdom will not last very long.
Right.
And Sheldon made sure that he was with really smart people like you and rest of RC and CAG.
Well, you mean the RC and also me. In any case, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been a big fan of yours for many, many years, and I loved everything you've done and all the stuff you got to touch at the company. And I'm bummed that you're not there anymore, but so it goes sometimes. But hopefully we'll be able to hang out at a MagicCon or a Command Fest and just chill and jam some games again.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Shiv, for having me. And with Magic, a lot of people talk about they left Magic in Mirrodin or coming out with the first time, but with Magic, you can check out anytime you'd like, but you can never leave.
You will.
I'll be around.
Yeah, it feels like the what Magic needs is not a Street Fighter set, but a Mortal Kombat one with Scorpion just going, get over here, and yanking you back.
So this is a fun story that I don't think most people know. I brought a bunch of new cards to Magic Online with new art to replace previous cards, and one was Enter the Infinite with art that I'd pulled out from the slush of Magic the Gathering when looking at those cards. So I got to make that card with the new art. The art is by Jake Murray. And I was like, well, can I put my own flavor text on here? No one's going to stop me. I looked around. Oh, I make the rules here. Who put me in charge? who would do this? I'm going to write some flavor text. And I already did my Street Fighter call out. So it's turned into my Mortal Kombat call out. And some of the quotes that would appear in Mortal Kombat 1 when you load the game up would say, there is no knowledge, there is no power. And so that's the flavor text I put on Into the Infinite as my shout out.
So sick.
Yeah.
That is so sick. And for what it's worth, when they reprinted Enter the Infinite in Ravnica Remastered, that's the art you chose and the flavor text you wrote.
I'm very glad they used my art, the card that I slapped together. And yeah, I get a paper version of it now. I've got a monotype of it hanging in my living room because I'm so happy with that card. Yeah.
Okay, before I let you go, I need to know, what is that orange guitar behind you?
That's the Guitar Zard.
What the hell is going on with that thing?
It's a guitar I got made by North Star Guitars, actually in Spokane. And it's just a 6-string electric guitar. It's got the Guitar Zard here labeled for it. I think the batteries are probably dead, but the lights do. Oh, no, they do work. So the lights along the fretboard turn on. Oh, they came off. But anyway, I've been messing with it because I played and the lights go off. But yeah, it's one of my electric guitars.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I've just been staring at it the whole time since it's been sitting behind you. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah. So
that's so sick.
My car is a Charizard. I have a guitar. I have a Charizard, a Guitar Zard. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, like, dude, your playroom that you are recording in is like god tier, right? Like the lightsabers on the wall, a Charizard guitar. I don't know about that stupid blue planeswalker behind you, though. I will say, not a fan of the Narset. Just gonna say,
I had her up because I did commentary for the NRG series 2 weekends ago, and I wanted to put a modern card up there. Normally, it's Soul Eternal Advocate, one of my 5 Heroes of the Realm cards, but I switched that out. So.
Nice. Yeah. And like that beautiful like Bolus poster behind you. And then of course a stand-up arcade machine, because why wouldn't you have one? Yeah,
that Bolus hung up in Blake's office for such a long time in the Wizard's office. And when we moved, there was art to grab. And I was like, yeah, I'll have Nicol Bolus just look over me. So why not?
All right, my dude. If folks wanted to find you, where could they go?
They can go on Twitter. I'm J_Bellerin there. But everywhere else, I made that a long time ago, back when I would cosplay as Jace. I went to Grand Prix Nashville in 2012. I cosplayed Jace Bellerin when it was kind of weird to do so. Like, why is this guy dressed up as a planeswalker and he's playing and he made day 2 of the GP? What's happening here? And it's been awesome seeing how cosplay just become part of the game now. That was wonderful. But yeah, J_Bellerin on Twitter. And then I guess Linuka, Linuka everywhere else. But I'm not a lot of other places. I sometimes stream on Twitch, but
yeah. Twitter's really honestly where we live. Let's be real. I will go there until the lights turn off, and then I'll find myself somewhere else to be. But in the meantime, you can find me on Twitter at GearPreGears. You can find this podcast wherever podcasts are sold, or at YouTube every Tuesday. Thanks to my editor Dan of SCG fame. And also, you can see me on Shivam and Wheeler Love Magic, where we sit and talk about every single set in the history of Magic. Including most recently, I believe it would have been Time Spiral Block, and before that, like 7 hours on Legends. And then you can also hear me talk about Dragonlance on the monthly Chronicles Dragonlance podcast that I do with my friend John. And because I'm just I've got nothing better to do than talk into these boxes, so here I am. Anyways, my friends, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you next time.